Childhood is a wonderful time when much is forgiven, there is no responsibility yet, typical for adults. However, sometimes even in this carefree time, one can commit such terrible acts that will remain a bloody imprint on the rest of one's life. On January 5, 2023, the quiet St. Thomas Square area in downtown Tulsa, Oklahoma, USA, was stunned by a terrible event. That night, mother of three April Lita allowed her middle son, 9-year-old Xander, to sleep downstairs because he had to get up early for school. The woman's youngest son, 3, was staying overnight with his father. In addition to April and Xander, the woman's 12-year-old daughter and 2 cats were also in the duplex. That evening, April and her daughter went upstairs to sleep, leaving the 9-year-old boy downstairs. Around midnight, the Lita family heard children's screams. April's mother woke up and heard sounds coming from the first floor, where Xander was sleeping. The woman assumed that he was just having a bad dream. But it turned out to be much worse. When the mother came down to check, she ran to her son and started turning him over on the couch to wake him up, but he was silent. The woman began to examine him and noticed blood. April began to wake her son more insistently, and he, having barely regained consciousness, managed to say, "She stabbed me." The mother did not understand who the boy was talking about. Xander was drifting in and out of consciousness. The woman lifted her son's shirt and saw puncture wounds on his chest. April didn't hesitate and immediately called 911, where the woman was advised to perform CPR. While the woman was following the operator's instructions, she was simultaneously trying to find her daughter, constantly shouting her name, but no one responded. The girl's name is not being disclosed for security reasons. The mother assumed that some burglar had broken into their apartment and attacked her son. The woman was worried that her daughter might have suffered the same fate, or that her daughter might have hidden somewhere or fled the house in panic. When police arrived on the scene, they encountered a 12-year-old girl running down the stairs, crying hysterically and screaming, "Sorry, sorry." She was clearly in shock, but without hesitation admitted that she had stabbed her brother several times. By this point, the child was still alive, but in serious condition. April watched in horror as medics tried to save her son. The mother initially did not believe her daughter's confession. She still thought that some criminal had broken into their home and attacked her son, but the daughter claimed that she had done it. April screamed and cried. She couldn't understand why her daughter did that. The woman started screaming, "Pray to God that he survives." The boy was immediately taken to the local medical center, where they tried to help him. Xander was operated on and they hoped for a miracle, while the daughter stayed with the police and her mother to explain herself at the house. Meanwhile, forensic experts were already working hard at the scene. The police were examining the house and recording on body cameras, recording the girl's confession. Her mother April was hysterical. It took a long time for her to calm down and begin to speak coherently. The schoolgirl was also very worried. She cried and apologized, saying that she did not understand what came over her. She begged her to forgive her. Law enforcement officers inspected the living room where the attack on the 9-year-old boy took place, but did not find the knife that his sister spoke of. She immediately admitted that after she had stabbed her brother several times, she went up to her room and threw the bladed weapon out the window. After examining the courtyard, the forensic experts easily found him in the designated place, covered in blood. Naturally, the question of why all this happened was of greatest concern. The girl said that she did not understand what had come over her. She called her condition some kind of demonic. She told everything that allowed her to reconstruct the chain of tragic events. According to her, that evening her brother sat up late in front of the TV in the living room and watched a series. She heard him from upstairs. At some point, something clicked in Xander's older sister's head. She picked up a knife and went downstairs. The 12-year-old girl, without saying a word, approached her brother, who froze at the unexpected appearance of his sister. Suddenly, she struck several blows, concentrated in the chest area. In total, 3 deep stab wounds were counted. The boy began to scream. His sister came to her senses from his voice. She realized that something terrible had happened, ran to her room and threw the knife out the window, and then hid until the police arrived. Xander continued to fight for his life in the medical center. He received very deep wounds, It is obvious that the attacker was beating him with hatred and with all her might. Meanwhile, the sister told the police in detail what happened, even demonstrating her actions to the officers. All of this was filmed by body cameras. It was obvious that the girl was remorseful. She kept repeating that everything would be fine with Xander. The situation was very serious. If the boy could not survive this attack, then the sister would be charged with murder. The only controversial point in determining the punishment was her age. Detectives suspected that the girl might have had mental problems that led to this tragedy. They tried to identify behavioral problems, signs of self-harm, so they continued to collect information. So they actually managed to find old cuts on her right hand. The schoolgirl admitted that she had inflicted the injuries on herself, using an ordinary knife. They looked old. Finally, her mother, April, came to her senses. She spoke to the police, but the woman found it difficult to concentrate. She was worried about what would happen to her daughter and son. To support the boy, she was going to go to the hospital. The mother wanted to support her 9-year-old child during this difficult time. After a short conversation with detectives, she packed up and left for the medical center. At the same time, her daughter was placed in the back of a police car, handcuffed, and taken to the station for questioning. While she was riding in the police car, she asked several times what would happen to her now. At that time, the investigators did not even know how it would all end. It was still unclear whether the victim would survive. They tried to calm the girl down, saying that Xander had a good chance of surviving the attack, because he was in the hospital. There, the child was immediately given first aid. Now experienced specialists are fighting for his life and doing everything possible to save the boy. The girl was worried whether she would be able to go to her school, where she had all her friends, to at least say goodbye to them. She was afraid that she would go to jail, that she had ruined her life and blamed herself for everything. After that, she began to cry and pray for her brother's life. But there were major complications, since under state law a criminal must be at least 13 years old to be tried as an adult and face serious prison time. The situation also hinged heavily on whether Xander would overcome his injuries and whether the boy would survive. The girl opened up and told the police a story about how her math teacher was being treated for cancer, and when he returned to school recently, she liked his subject even more. The girl sympathized with the teacher very much. She continued to cry and quietly repeated that she was very sorry. Xander's sister also shared that she helped her mother with the housework and looked after her brothers while their mother was at work. The detainee even began to think that all this was just a bad dream that needed to be gotten rid of. She said that she wanted to wake up and come to her senses as soon as possible, and then even asked to remove the handcuffs from her because she was a good girl. While the older sister talked to the detectives and tried to understand what awaited her, Xander was in the hospital. After some time, his mother April arrived here. The woman remained in the ward to wait. One of the police officers who accompanied her also came here. The child was alive, but remained in serious condition. Doctors did everything possible to save him. They tried to calm the woman down, saying that her son's condition had stabilized. April replied that she did not want to lose both children that night. While the policeman tried to calm April down, he wanted to get more information from her. The woman said that she was a single mother. The children had different fathers. They showed almost no attention to them and did not help the woman. According to her, there were never any problems between the children. On the contrary, the brother and sister got along well and supported each other. They often did yoga and went for walks together. The woman did not allow them to use obscene words, forbade them to watch horror films that could cause aggression in the girl. They attended church every weekend, were raised in a conservative environment. There were never any serious difficulties with the daughter. She was not prone to violence, was not noticed in torturing animals. At school, the girl was calm and docile, even a little shy. At least, that was the case until her transition period, which began less than a year before the attack. During this period, the girl became more withdrawn, spending more time alone with herself. She could stay in her room for hours, began to show discontent for various reasons, but it was more like periodic grumbling than aggression. April believed that all this was typical of teenagers her age. The woman did not see anything special in her behavior. She believed that this was a normal period of puberty, and her daughter went through it even more calmly than usual. There were no conflicts in the family. The girl did not even raise her voice to her mother. April was sure that her isolation would pass with time, tried to support the girl and not to put unnecessary pressure. The woman tried her best to maintain a healthy atmosphere in the family. Later, all this was confirmed by her neighbors and relatives. No one had seen their daughter behave like a troubled teenager who could stab her own brother. It looked like a spontaneous act of unmotivated cruelty. April was a single mother of 3 children, 9-year-old Xanter, his older 12-year-old sister and younger 3-year-old brother. She spent most of her time working to provide for her children. It was hard for the woman to cope with all the difficulties. Xanter's biological father was only occasionally present in their lives, and the father of his daughter and youngest son was not present at all. Despite the little support from the man and relatives, it was difficult to fully care for and look after the children. The woman told a law enforcement officer that she had no idea what could have caused her daughter to become so angry. Up until this point, the children had only had short and mild quarrels that would pass immediately. They never fought. They calmed down quickly and always made peace. All this resembled a typical relationship between a brother and sister. The atmosphere in the family was comfortable and both parents contributed to it, despite the fact that Xanter's father took little part in the children's lives. But when he appeared, the man never singled out his son in comparison with the girl. Despite the fact that she was not his, he always paid equal attention to all 3 children, so that no one felt like an outcast. April was sure that she and her ex-husband built a relationship in such a way that none of the children had problems with attention. However, there were obvious facts that contradicted these words. The schoolgirl had cuts on her wrists, which she had inflicted on herself. The detective rightly believed that mental health issues could have played a large role in all of this. By the end of the conversation, the police officer asked April to sign a voluntary permission to search the house where the family lived. The woman was sure that nothing criminal would be found there, so she signed the document. The detective left. Now it was necessary to send a group of forensic experts to the area of the house. After that, April's relatives arrived at the medical center. Everyone wanted to support the woman from Ender. Unfortunately, all the doctor's efforts were in vain. The boy took a turn for the worse and died of his injuries at 2:30 a.m. Around 4 a.m., one of the detectives brought in a 12-year-old girl for questioning. She was still visibly nervous and shaken, but she was reassured by the assurance that help was needed for Andera. They decided not to tell her right away that her brother had died in the hospital. The girl was examined, and the injuries found on her hands were documented. Shortly after that, April arrived at the station. The woman had lost her son but wanted to support her daughter. She believed it was not intentional. Detectives were going to talk to the 12-year-old girl in the presence of her mother. The woman told her daughter that they had failed to save her son, after which they both burst into tears. The schoolgirl kept begging for forgiveness. Early in the morning, police officers continued to work in the house where the family lived. Crime scene investigators were examining the crime scene, trying to find answers to all the questions. Several people were examining the rooms, others were going to neighbors' houses. This morning was especially grim, as the police in this area had dealt with other murders since the beginning of the year, but none of them were committed by such a young criminal. For all the locals, the girl's actions were a real shock. No one suspected that she was capable of something like that. People confirmed April's words. Her daughter had not been noticed in criminal episodes, was always quiet, non-conflictual, did not torture animals. Some described the girl as too withdrawn, but she did not look like a killer. Her room was thoroughly searched, but nothing incriminating was found. There was nothing forbidden there. The schoolgirl's diary contained ordinary teenage experiences. There were no frightening requests in her browser or on her mobile phone. It all seemed strange. A situation where something like this happens spontaneously is something like an exception to the rule. Usually a person moves towards murder gradually, starting with minor crimes. Detectives went to the girls' school, but there too, they heard the same stories about her quiet nature repeated. Meanwhile, the 12-year-old suspect was in custody at a family juvenile justice center. The motive for the attack had not yet been revealed, further complicating the situation. Despite the girl's recorded confession, the question of what to do with the killer, given her age, continued to be discussed. Despite the fact that April lost her son Xander, she publicly stated that she believed in justice for her daughter, hoped to cope with her problems, and believed that she would return to the family after all these horrors were over. The woman was sure that her actions could only be related to mental problems. The woman told detectives that several years before the tragedy, her daughter had been prescribed new medications for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. After taking the medication for some time, she noticed that the schoolgirl had begun to behave much more aggressively. It seemed that she was unreasonably dissatisfied with any minor reason. At first, none of this was perceived as alarming signs. Several years passed. The girl began to withdraw, communicate less even with close people. The most alarming fact was that she had injured herself. Not everyone believed that the drugs prescribed to the schoolgirl could affect her in such a way that they caused a manic state. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder was not something special. It is a fairly common problem among children. However, it does not cause aggression, cruelty, or unpredictable behavior in itself. This syndrome could have resembled a more serious illness, but there were no records of it in the medical institutions the girl attended. April went to the medical center as soon as she noticed the first signs of problems. The woman noticed instability in her daughter's condition, so she wanted to make her more balanced and calm. When she brought her daughter to the clinic, the specialist talked to the girl, made a diagnosis without hesitation and prescribed medication. All this happened 5 years before the tragedy. The girl had been taking medication all this time. However, a little less than the years of her brother's attack, she began to have problems with her grades. So April began to figure out what was going on again. The woman was approached by teachers at the school. On the recommendation of the school's medical staff, she talked to her daughter, who admitted that she was hallucinating. The girl began to see ghosts who warned her of her imminent death. Then the mother took her daughter to the clinic again. There she was checked. The doctor decided to adjust the therapy, so he reviewed and prescribed new medications. But the situation only worsened. So, a month before Xander's murder, April decided to stop taking her medication. Now the woman began to analyze in more detail the events leading up to the tragedy. In this way, she looked at old problems in a new way and came to the conclusion that her daughter had experienced a manic episode when she cut herself. Unfortunately, due to her lack of knowledge, her mother simply did not perceive this as a warning sign. She decided that it would be enough to take her daughter out of school and homeschool her. This is exactly what she timed the discontinuation of the drug to. The woman considered it a temporary measure, continued to consult with experts at the medical center, but due to her constant work and busy schedule, she could not do it regularly. Before making a decision, she talked to the school teachers. The woman was reassured by the fact that there were about 25 children at home at the school at the same time. It really does help many people cope with adolescence and problems like her daughter's. It calmed the worried mother. She had no idea what all this could lead to. At the same time, April never feared for the safety of her youngest child, as Xander and his sister never had any serious problems or conflicts. Even during the period of deterioration of the older girl's condition, she always demonstrated love for her brother. The 12-year-old girl continued to insist that she had no idea why all this happened. She described her condition as some kind of demonic insanity. It was as if she was watching what was happening from the outside and could not do anything, as if she did not control her actions. At the same time, she now felt a very strong sense of guilt. Naturally, this sounded like symptoms of something far more disturbing than simple attention deficit disorder. After speaking with law enforcement, April made several statements on a local news station. Journalists took a keen interest in the case, as it was an unprecedented case given the age of the killer and the victim. Everyone was eager to interview the mother, and it all went viral. The woman blamed herself, believing that she had not been attentive enough to notice her daughter's alarming symptoms in time. According to her, several months before the attack, her daughter increasingly secluded herself in a room, spending several hours there, during which she refused any contact with loved ones. It was very unusual for her, but the mother attributed her daughter's behavioral changes to normal teenage problems. She remembered very well how she herself had gone through something similar, a transitional period. Many consoled the mother, but during the investigation, the police managed to find out that she may have really missed something. Friends of the attacker reported frightening information. As it turned out, several of her daughter's friends heard the schoolgirl confess that she wanted to stab her brother. This happened several weeks before the attack. Probably, her friends did not take her words seriously, so they did not tell anyone about it, not even their loved ones. April insisted that she had not heard anything like that herself, and there were no such entries in the heroine of the story's diary. Assessing the situation, experts confirmed that some medications for attention deficit syndrome can provoke dangerous fluctuations in mental state. It's quite rare, and it takes a combination of unfortunate circumstances. Xander's sister would have been in the small percentage of people who can become aggressive, impulsive, or even self-harming. All of this would be consistent with the behavior of a teenager. There were also opponents of this theory, who argued that in the few months during which the schoolgirl stopped taking the prescription drug, it should have completely left her system and could not have caused any side effects. April continued to defend her daughter, believing that the drug could have caused irreparable damage even during the period of taking it. Although this vision explained what happened, not all experts supported this opinion. The girl ended up in a juvenile detention center while awaiting a hearing. Initially, there were discussions about what to do with her. In parallel, psychiatric experts worked with the girl, provided intensive care, and assessed the suspect's condition. During this entire period, she did not exhibit any alarming symptoms, mood swings, or a tendency to harm herself or others. She was calm and not aggressive, which became a reason to challenge her mother's opinion about the harm of the drug. Many argued that if the drug had caused irreparable damage to the brain, the girl would have continued to show signs of mental disorders even behind bars. A number of experts argued that some kind of severe stress had occurred in the girl's life before the attack. Unfortunately, neither she, nor her mother, nor her immediate circle had the slightest idea what could have affected the child in such a way. They settled on the opinion that some hidden factors played a significant role, which could have affected the girl's condition, causing a short-term psychotic attack. Detectives initially believed that illegal drugs might have been involved, but the schoolgirl was not diagnosed with any addictions while in custody. Toxicology tests showed that her blood was clean. In addition, a search of the house did not turn up anything incriminating. The girl's close friends also never saw her use even light substances. The idea of mental problems was the main thing on the agenda. The juvenile delinquent was never able to fully explain her actions even after several months of work with doctors, as well as at the beginning of a rehabilitation course. A sudden psychotic episode seemed to explain what had happened, although not everyone bought the idea. Several experts who worked with the teenager concluded that she might have bipolar disorder that had been misdiagnosed. Taking medication for attention deficit disorder would not have been effective in this case, and could have even worsened the situation. April continued to insist that her daughter had always been well-behaved, a calm and reserved child. After the start of detention, bipolar disorder could not go away. Rather, it could have worsened, but, nevertheless, this was not observed. Against the backdrop of the discussion, there were even people who spoke out against the mother. Those who cared said that the woman was behaving incorrectly, continuing to support the killer, but the mother was not going to back down. April believed that the girl needed support and help more than ever. The woman was sure that all this was the result of a medical error, and in her right mind her daughter would never have attacked her brother. Some perceived the woman's behavior as the act of a heroic mother who was doing everything she could to protect her daughter, but it was not without harsh criticism. The mother complained that she faced similar manifestations of condemnation from neighbors who were closely following the developments. There were numerous opponents of the woman who called her a bad mother. People believed that she did not pay enough attention to the girl and was unable to protect her son. Despite the harsh criticism, April continued to speak out in defense of her daughter. In interviews, she repeatedly stated that she was waiting for all this to end and for her daughter to return to the family. The woman understood that it would take a long time to recover from this frightening episode, but she did not want to give up on the girl.